It's Coach AK with Impact Today, and today we got an exciting show. We got Kelly Peeler, the founder of NextGenVest, TEDx speaker, and on Goldman Sachs top 100 entrepreneurs, actually intriguing entrepreneurs. And today we're going to be talking about empowering students to fund their passion. Now, Kelly Peeler, a good friend of mine, is the founder of NextGenVest, the money mentor for students. NextGenVest helps students save time, save money with all major financial decisions. Starting with paying for college over the text message where you can actually connect with NextGenVest by texting them and getting 24/7 hotline support. Now, right, NextGenVest has helped thousands of students across 40 states get more money for college. Prior to starting with NextGenVest, Kelly was an analyst with JP Morgan Investments, bank covering financial institutions, and also as a financial advisor. Alongside her time at JP Morgan, she ran a nonprofit that helped bring entrepreneurship programs to Iraq universities. And also graduated from Harvard, she was selected as one of the 8 Kauffman Foundation Global Scholars, accepted as one of the 30 up-and-coming women in America named as Goldman Sachs Intriguing Entrepreneurs, and named a White House Start the Spark ambassador. Her TED Talk entitled How to Change the World as a Millennial, I always have trouble with that word. Millennial, and don't be stupid with your money. I had to read that because I don't want to make a mistake. You have an impressive resume. How are you doing, Kelly?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Now, I'm not gonna bore people today because we always have that question about who is Kelly, okay? So this time, we know who you are a little bit with your introductions, and I just wanna know, I'm gonna ask five questions.
Okay,
from different perspectives. And the point of this webinar, the point of this interview is to get more financially fit. You know, if you're a student, you have a parent and you have a child that's getting to college, that's getting more expensive, Kelly is gonna help you really get there. And first, we wanna know who Kelly is. Now, Kelly, first, from your own perspective, who are you?
I want to be, because I'm always aspirational. I'm someone who empowers students to live to their fullest potential, okay, by making the smartest financial decisions that they possibly can.
Okay. Now, as we just finished up not too long ago from Mother's Day, how would your mother describe you?
Insane. She says that to me all the time. Oh, actually, yeah.
Okay. What about your friends?
I would say probably funny, competitive, like giving, hopefully, and likely entertaining as well.
Okay. What about, I know you probably don't have any, but how would your enemies describe you?
Yeah, I can't say I do have enemies, but I mean, if there is any out there, probably as a competitor.
Okay. Next, I know you work with a lot of youth, how would the youth describe you?
Hopefully inspiring. Someone who is really fighting and is an advocate for them when a lot of other people are not. So I would say inspiring.
Okay. Now, I know that you do a lot of work with students. You do a lot of work with, obviously when you work with students, you're also working with a lot of families as well.
Yep.
And college is always getting so much more expensive. You know, what would you say, I mean, what kind of advice would you give for students, for families regarding understanding and better incorporating themselves with financial literacy?
Sure. So and I'll just sort of take a little bit of a step back of what NextGenVest is. Our whole ethos is to save students time and money around major financial decisions. And we do this by connecting them directly with a money mentor all over text message. So a student or a parent can text into our Money Mentor hotline 24/7, and that number is 646-798-1745. And once they do, they're immediately connected to a real person who we've trained to navigate the financial aid process, to apply for scholarships, to get grants, to figure out how to not get into credit card debt, and really doing that in a way that is already with the attention span of a student. So for any parents who may in the future be listening, I'm probably going to go out there on a limb and say that you'll agree with me in saying that most attention span for a young person is one, glued to their phone, and about like 15 seconds. So we are talking to students where they communicate most, which is over text message. So in terms of specifically answering your question, how to be smarter about this process of paying for college, which we like to call your quote unquote first mortgage, because to be quite honest, it really is the cost of almost buying a house, or a very nice house at that, is a few things. One is to really collectively be talking to each other. So we find a lot of parents won't talk to their kids about the paperwork that's involved, the process, how much the actual cost means. We find that a lot of students don't talk to their parents and are overly worried about like what their parents' finances look like. And so the first thing is to really just like have a conversation to say, look, college is expensive. How can we optimize paying for college? And also let's get on the same page to just like de-stress this whole thing. So that's number one. Number two is really to start early. So for example, the financial aid application process for all high school students is actually changing next year. I won't kind of go into the details, but key forms are going to be available, the FAFSA, as of October 1st, which is totally different than last year when it was available January 1st. And that's really important because it's going to be like a big mess this fall for students. They're going to be applying for colleges and have to submit all their financial aid paperwork. And the reason why that's important as well is because students and families leave about $2.7 billion of free federal aid unclaimed every year. And the reason why that happens, so let's just think about that. $2.7 billion unclaimed free federal aid, money you don't have to pay back, in light of the fact that the average college graduate graduates with about $33,000 in student loan debt. The amount of a nice car, right? So we're really trying to help students optimize, and part of that is filling out the right paperwork and submitting it on time, which sounds trivial, but it's like really the case. And we help students think through making sure that they're doing that on track, doing it in the correct ways, making the deadlines, but then also doing things like negotiating their financial aid packages. So just this past month alone, we saved students $143,000 by negotiating their financial aid packages or their tuition bills with them. So, and the kind of cool thing is that we're doing this at like 11 p.m. on a Sunday, where you wouldn't have access to, a guidance counselor, a college advisor at that time. Frankly, like, you wouldn't be able to like call the FAFSA hotline. So we're accessible when no one else is, and we're doing it in a forum that is really where students spend most of their time anyway.
So you talked a little bit about the students. How aware and how involved are the parents in this process?
It really depends. So 70% of our users, so we help thousands of students across 40 states. Okay. And by the way, it's all free. And I'm happy to talk more about that and why we chose to do that. But 70% of our users are low-income students. So these are students where they might be at one of the high schools where 20% of high schools in the US don't even have a college advisor in their schools. They might have a parent that is Spanish speaking and not English speaking. They might have, they might not have parents who are kind of guiding them through this process, which is very complex. So for that majority of our audience, they're actually very involved because they know that if they want to kind of better their future and go to college, they have to find resources, and we're kind of the last, we're really it for them. So I would say it depends on the socioeconomic class of the student. But to be quite honest, that doesn't necessarily mean that students from middle income to higher middle income families are disengaged. And I would say that that should be the case too, because a lot of students from middle income and higher income might say, oh, my parents are taking care of this. And then they graduate and their parents filled out the forms wrong and they owe more money than they actually thought themselves. So it's really, and you'd be so surprised how many times we hear that of students saying, oh, my parents are taking care of it. And then they graduate and it's like, wait, I owe $15,000 more than I even realized. How did this happen? Which is pretty catastrophic for a student who might not even have a job.
Right.
So we really see super high engagement from our users who are low income, but really see, you know, an increasing amount for middle income to high income students too.
Okay. And I know also as we, this isn't, you know, an interview between us, but there's also a chance for people, you know, on the call or on the platform to also ask questions if they have any, because this is something really, really big. I remember when I was in high school, I had no idea about any of this. I had no idea about scholarships. For me, I was an athlete. So I said, if I don't get an athletic scholarship, then it may be kind of difficult. What do you think is the thing that holds most students back from actually engaging in this process?
I honestly think it's complete lack of, it's not their fault. It's the complete lack of empathy of everyone else who's trying to help them. So if you think of a college advisor doing great work, but you know, most students don't want to go talk to an adult. They might not want to go into someone's office, have to sit there, be kind of poised. They might not want to go Google things online. They might not even have a laptop or a desktop at their home. They certainly don't want to go read through textbooks. No one wants to watch a PowerPoint presentation. So really what I would say is that until now, hopefully we're the product, but until now, a lot of products haven't met students where they already are. They're not talking to them in a channel where they can feel comfortable. So for example, I'll just give an example of how we build trust with students so that we basically make these conversations and learning this stuff like not suck is our money, because it is dry. It's really complex. It's really dry. It's very stressful for students. But our money mentors use things like GIFs and emojis, and they're funny, and they make cultural references. Like they'll talk about Beyonce and DJ Khaled. And so it's something that it's literally like talking to kind of like your cool older brother or older sister and getting kind of like the insider tips from them, as opposed to talking to an adult who, you know, your attention span is like out the window. So I would really say that students, a lot of people kind of talk about this generation of people who are free, are just going to be partying all the time, don't really appreciate, millennials in general. And I would really say, I would really counter that, because we see thousands of conversations of students saying, like 10 p.m. on a Saturday saying, I'm so stressed out about this whole process. My mom doesn't really know how to do this. I'm really worried about my future. I don't want to take out loans. I'm a first generation college student. And so they feel the weight, but they don't really have a platform to communicate that effectively. And we've found the channel to do that pretty authentically with them.
Well, you talked a lot about the meeting students where they are and a platform. Like, what do you mean by a platform? What type of platform are you using? Hello? Oh.
Cutting out a little bit.
Oh, I am.
There you go.
Oh, sorry. So we were talking about platforms. So what type of platforms, especially at this age group, does NextGenVest use?
Yeah, so our age demographic is primarily 16 to, I'd say, 20, 22, 23. And so high school and into college, we'd love to be able to extend that, but we're hyper-focused on this audience currently. We use our text message. So anyone who has a phone, it's not app-based, it's literally a text message hotline. And we did that because some people don't have, most people release apps in iOS, so for iPhones first, and a lot of low-income students have Android. So we wanted to go cross We wanted to remove that from the discussion and go directly to just to SMS and text message. And we also use our secondary platform is Snapchat. So we have tons and tons of students who Snapchat or snap in questions around the financial aid process, around things like not getting into credit card debt, around budgeting, to students, or we have college students who do college campus takeovers. So they'll tour their college campus, which is also a cheaper way for a lot of students to campus that they might not be able to travel to. So those students show their campus around, they talk about their experience paying for colleges that they chose. And we really see high engagement on Snapchat because over 200 million users are on Snapchat, growing to around 300 million. Over 45% of that is under age of 25. So that's really where a lot of students are spending their time. And that's a huge channel for us too.
So, but you're talking a lot about, going to college and finding, maybe grants or loans or whatever they need to do to go to college. NextGenVest, is there more features than, the text messaging feature, and what can students gain or even parents gain from using the platform?
I mean, so they can also, so we also kind of complement all these. So the way that it works is that you're literally partnered with a person, and that person will not only talk with you, answer your questions, kind of teach you through conversation, but they'll also send you reminders for key deadlines, or basically like organize you so that you can really just be relying on this money mentor to keep you on track, as opposed to having to put calendar reminders or things on your fridge or write stuff down. In charge of doing that for you. But they also put in educational content. So we have tons, we have a whole digital library of short videos on anything from like budgeting 101 to credit cards 101 to investing 101. And they also send that education content alongside of that. And
what are the ages, right? Can you use it for a high school student, a middle school student, a college student? What is the age demographics?
Really, the age demographic is like 16 to 23. The transition point from, frankly, when you've gotten maybe your first like debit card, going if you're driving to school like for gas, or you've got your first like kind of part-time job, to paying for college, and then into college too.
Okay. And I think one of the most, there's a lot of stuff that students, there's parents that are facing. What would you say if there's one tip, one important thing that if a student was graduating from college or parents need to know, what is that one important tip that you would give them?
I would say to actually fully understand how much money they will owe after they graduate from college. So that might seem like a ridiculous thing, but a lot of students are surprised when they graduate and they have literally people asking for loan payments, how much they actually owe. And the reason being is because a very opaque and not transparent process. So we have students saying, wait, where do I even like go online to find out how much I owe? So we really encourage students to write, and families to write, like literally write an equation that says, okay, if I'm taking out this much amount of money for college, this much out of pocket, and I'm thinking about studying this major, go to my school alumni like group or page online, look up the employment statistics and the average salaries of that potential career, and then map out, okay, is that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years that I'm going to still owe money for? Because then that starts to become a lot more tangible vision, as opposed to, oh, I'll just get to it whenever, or in the future, or whenever I get a job. And really kind of higher education in the US it's not thought of as like a consumer service, like buying something in return. Like you're really purchasing a job at the end of it. So we encourage students to really think about how much money would you make in that career field, and how does that relate to your loans? And we help them like actually kind of think through that equation.
So Kelly, obviously you were a high school student at one point as well. What advice would you have given yourself as you see, and going back, I'm not going to say how old you are, but what advice would you have given yourself, the young high schooler Kelly years ago?
A few things. I would say to is to understand that what my strengths and weaknesses were, and to be really clear with myself what those were, as opposed to, I'm a believer rising for strengths and delegating weaknesses. So the transparency to myself to say, you know, maybe like statistics is not my thing and I should be okay with it, as opposed to beating my head against the wall and trying to just be like above average at statistics type of thing. But to embrace both my strengths and my weaknesses and optimize for my strengths is probably I would say. And the second thing I would say is to meet as many people as possible. I respect and aspire to be like, because like something that so many students just completely don't think is accessible to them. You can pretty much hit up anyone on Twitter and there's a high chance that they would actually respond to your tweet. So I would say to be really aggressive about surrounding yourself with people that you respected, whether it be in the news or in the industry you want to go into, who you just thought were like great people, and really kind of developing relationships with them, whether it's be going to work for them as an intern, whether it be to just like get a 15-minute coffee with them. Pieces of advice.
Well, and we're talking a lot about NextGenVest, and you have an amazing story. And obviously, what we do on Impact Today, we highlight individuals that are doing amazing things around the world. So NextGenVest, you're obviously making a humongous impact. Actually, I'll say a generational impact. With families, with youth. But with you, we really want to focus on some of the stuff that you do as well. I know NextGenVest wasn't your first company, some work you've done with, but you have quite an impressive resume. But ideally, before NextGenVest, what was some of the work that you were doing before NextGenVest?
So I mean, the last thing I was doing, I graduated from college from Harvard in 2010. And as an undergraduate, I had started a nonprofit called Business Across Borders with two other people. And the mission of that nonprofit was to rebuild post-war zone economies by empowering young people within those countries to start companies in an effort to rebuild their own economy. So we did that in Iraq. So literally partnered with universities in Iraq to host startup competitions, to do mentorship programs, to bring in things like TEDx, Startup Weekend. I actually went over to Iraq and facilitated partnerships with different companies for students. And it was really incredible to see Iraqi university students, like in their 19, 20 years old, building, like the LinkedIn for Iraq, or very basic form, but like Khan Academy for Iraq. And to see them go, like really care about rebuilding their own economy was phenomenal. But it also sort of taught me that every young person to some extent is passionate about where they've come from, but no one tends to listen to them. So did that alongside of, so I actually did this like nights and weekends alongside of when I graduated. I took a job at JP Morgan. So I worked in the investment bank covering financial institutions. And then I switched over into the private bank, which where I was a financial advisor. So I would essentially like help people like build portfolios and come up with like broad advice for people to better manage their money. And then I left that to, I was lucky enough to get a fellowship with the Kauffman Foundation, which selected about 8 different entrepreneurs from around the world to do customer development. And they paid for us to do this for 6 months, to travel across the country and just like listen to who our users were. And then like formally launch NextGenVest. So those were just a few of the things.
I mean, so you were talking about investments, you're talking about nonprofits. And we have a question that I was actually going to touch on, but how did you come about this idea, and why not stay what most people said, hey, you have a good job maybe in the investment world, so why don't you just stay in there? What caused you to want to start NextGenVest?
I mean, I think it has to do with like what actually makes you happy. Like I was lucky enough to figure out that I'm super passionate working and empowering and just being around students. And so I found that kind of early on in my career, and that, you know, like there's no students running around a trading floor. So kind of two things. One, this passion of working with students and just being around them, inspiring them, and mentoring them, and really facilitating a different path for them. But then on the other side, after studying the history of financial crises at Harvard, I really see very similar leading indicators after studying 200 years worth of financial crises around the student loan market. So I'm a big believer that the next financial crisis is rooted in the student loan market. And I'm happy to talk more about that. But really it was a marrying between the two of those personal passions, which is they're kind of bizarre, but financial history and empowering young people, in my opinion, the number one thing holding a young person back from living to their fullest potential is are student loan burdens. So it's really hard to go work in an art gallery, to go work in a nonprofit, to go travel if you owe that $33,000 in student loan debt. And you may not have had to. That's average. That's like literally a car per student, which is kind of really alarming. And I don't know, like, I mean, after going to Iraq as well, I literally took vacation from JP Morgan to go to Iraq, which was a bit crazy. But it's kind of like, if you're not going to do something that you actually enjoy day in and day out, and you feel it's purposeful, then like, what are you doing? So I feel very lucky that I have the ability to do what I'm doing. And I want to give other younger people that to be able to pursue important work.
So you talk a lot about students and how passionate you are in that area. What do you hope as the final impact, either with, you know, maybe, yeah, with NextGenVest? Like, what is your goal? Like, what is it, the impact you're trying to create within these youth?
Yeah, I mean, and they're measurable too. So currently, 30% of students who take out student loans to pay for college drop out of college before they graduate. So these are people who owe money, drop out, don't have a degree, so they're really not in a great position. We literally want to lower that statistic so that we're guiding people through so that they can get a degree and then they can actually get a job. So one is lowering that statistic. The second is lowering that $33,000 per student. And we're kind of going about that in several different ways. And the third is to be able to allow for a student to think about, and we're coming out with examples of this, but if we save you $9,000 a year to go to college, maybe you should use that for something important to help other people. So we have a student who we literally saved, I think it was $18,000, and he's setting up a nonprofit to empower marginalized women in Southeast Asia. Like that's like extending impact to other people because of the financial side of things. So that's what I would say.
Well, I mean, you just set an amazing example of some impact that NextGenVest has caused already, or created. What is your proudest moment so far with NextGenVest?
I mean,
Kelly Peeler, actually.
I think it happens daily, which is literally just seeing responses from students. So whether we got a student last year $49,000 more to go to the University of Pennsylvania, which is their Wharton business school. And if we didn't help him with that, he would not have been able to go. So that's the difference between someone like a life-altering path where he has the potential to do so many more things versus not going to a remotely as good of college with as remotely as good of opportunities. So something like that, to the conversation at like 10 p.m. on a Sunday where a student is saying, oh my God, thank goodness you exist. I literally wouldn't have been able to do this by myself. I've been stressing about this for like a year. Thank you so much for existing, with like a smiley face emoji. And those are like two kind of like a bigger thing, and then like smaller things that happen all the time. But I mean, I feel really proud to be able to say that we're authentically and genuinely helping a lot of students.
Well, I mean, we always talk about, I mean, the positives. I mean, it is good. NextGenVest is doing a lot of amazing things, but sometimes people get, you know, down and out. Maybe they didn't get as much as they wanted, for example, or maybe somebody wanted to start a venture, but they realized it was just too hard. What have been some of the pain points or some things that just haven't been as easy with NextGenVest or in your journey?
I mean, I would say that we spend a lot of time approaching you know, we used to say that we did financial literacy, and that was not really the right way to even think about the product. So I would say it takes so much time to listen to a user base, to understand what they want, what would be a useful product for them, and to really build with empathy. So I would say, I mean, I literally was by myself for like the first 6 months of the company, which is kind of lonely. So I would say that was probably part of it, is just literally doing this myself, and going through the process of not knowing a lot of things, even though I've started different things in the past. So probably just like the loneliness factor, I'd say, would be a different low.
Okay. Like how many years has it been NextGenVest? Is it coming on?
It's like 2.5
years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like talk about a little bit about, I mean, we're talking about that loneliness, about that first 6 months, you know, that's challenging. And a lot of people, when that loneliness happens, that's when a lot of people says, you know, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to quit because it's too hard.
Yeah.
For one, what helped you continue to move forward through that path, and what impact and what growth have you seen since then?
I mean, we've seen like an obscene amount of growth, which has been great. And that's kind of like why, ultimately, like what I go back to every day is, do I feel inspired about like how we are helping end users? So if we continue to help end users, like I will do this from my parents' basement, because it's literally something that they need and they want, and it will help them in the future. What I would say though is that like the beginning loneliness elements, first of all, building a startup or building a company is insanely difficult. I also don't think that most people should be doing it. I think that it takes a lot for people to be self-aware, to say, what do you love? Like I love going from nothing to something. I love 0 to 1, like the ability to go from idea to product to testers to people buying something to it being like scaling. And not a lot of people like love that, and that's perfectly fine. Like they might love the ability to have a very stable paycheck, and that's respectable. It's just about having self-awareness to say, this is what like gets me up in the morning and what I'm obsessed with.
Okay. Big question of the whole entire interview is, how do you want to be remembered? You know, when it's all said and done and you've taken your last breath, what do you want to be remembered for?
Going back to what I had mentioned before, which is literally being #1 in the world. And I don't know how you'd rank that, but whether it's like Twitter followers or Snapchat followers, but really being someone like #1 in the world at inspiring younger people to live to their fullest potential. So maybe that's having a student start something because I helped save them money earlier in their lives. Maybe it's someone being able to go and be a doctor, and they couldn't have afforded medical school because they were paying off their college tuition loans, and they're the preeminent surgeon in the world. So really, I think it's about my legacy is hopefully about really having empowered students to go bigger, make a bigger impact themselves.
No, great. I mean, I share that same type of passion, that same type of mission. And knowing you, Kelly, you've done a lot of amazing things, and especially as college tuition is going up, the ability for individuals to go to college and have a future is a generational impact. So if a kid is able to go to college, that means their kids are also going to be able to go a better opportunity to go to college as well. And you're doing that. I've seen the growth, and it's amazing. So for us, in terms of impact today, we're just happy to have you on the episode today as you're talking about not only what you do, but also what NextGenVest does and the impact and the ripple effect that is having. Any final thoughts?
I mean, I would say that if anyone, like, this is a really tough process. We're, on the broader term vision, it's really about redesigning how people interact with money. One of the most important things in people's lives that for some reason, most people procrastinate, most people know nothing about, and most people, it's like a very uncomfortable thing to learn or to discuss with other people. So we really want to reshape that from the beginning, make it something that is colloquial. So you're turning money into a conversation that's trustworthy. You're talking to someone that you trust, who's kind of like you, and who's really kind of looking out for you. So that's where the money mentor term comes in. And I would say that if you are a parent or a student or a teacher, that is to not underestimate how hard this whole process is, and to actually like literally get help. And we can help pretty much most people. And you can do that by texting in to our hotline anytime. And that's what I would say is don't feel lonely about this process because it is very overwhelming.
Right. You're talking about they can text. So how can someone find out more information about NextGenVest, and then how can people also get in contact with the Kelly Peeler?
So anyone can text into the NextGenVest hotline, which is 646-798-1745. And they just have to say, I want help. It's very simple. You're immediately connected to someone else. You can, if you don't have a pen to write down the number, you can always go to nextgenvest.com, and it's right there. And so that's how you can get in, in touch with us. You can also follow our Snapchat channel, which is at NextGenVest, where we have a lot of content every day of college campuses across the country. And in terms of getting in touch with me, I'd say probably the quickest way is over Twitter. If you tweet at me, at Kelly Peeler. Or if you're in New York and in a nice like outdoor bar, chances are I'll be nearby.
Great. Well, like I said before, Kelly, I'm just super excited for you to just be on the show, share your passion, share your vision, share your story, and share the impactful organization of NextGenVest. Once again, we just want to say this is Impact Today, where we highlight big people doing big things, empowering the world, and seeing how they're making the world a better place. I'm Coach AK, the founder and the president of Empower to Play, where Empower to Play is we use sports as a tool to bring communities together and provide opportunities for children living in under-resourced communities. Next, on the next show, we have Larry Frank, who is actually an accountant. This is actually a two-part series, and it's going to be talking about his story and about how he's making an effect, one person at a time. So we just want to thank everybody for being on the call. I want to thank Kelly Peeler again for the amazing work she's doing, and see you next time. Thank you.